All right, guys, there are two parts to these notes, so you should have two different papers. First part, we are going to be talking about angle relationships, and these are the angle pairs. These are vocab words that we are going to use all year. This right here is super important. We will use these terms shown on this chart all year long. So you should have this paper. You should also have one that says using angle relationships. Okay, so this is the angle relationships where we'll talk about the vocab. You should have one that says using as well, where you actually find some measurements. So starting with the first vocab word, vertical angles. Vertical angles are two angles across from each other on intersecting lines. They are always congruent, and we've talked about this word. Congruent means equal measure. Remember that was like the equal with the squiggle. So vertical angles, what I want you to do is draw two lines that are intersecting in any way. The vertical angles are the ones across from each other. So if I look at the top angle, for example, the angle vertical to that would be the bottom angle, and they are always congruent. So notice how I marked those both with a single arc. Okay? Now I could also have another set of vertical angles. I'm going to use two arcs now since I already used a single. If I look at the angle on the left, it's across from the angle on the right. So that's another set of vertical angles, and I could mark those with two little arc marks. They are also congruent, so they should be the same measure. Something to watch out for with vertical angles, it has to be two intersecting lines. So let me show you a non-example. I want you to write this with me so it doesn't get you. A non-example would be if you have more than two intersecting lines. Then the angles across from each other are not congruent. They're not vertical angles. So let's draw this. So I have these two lines intersecting, but then I also have this ray sticking out. Let's call this angle 1 and this angle 2. Here's where it is very, very tempting. 1 and 2 look like they're across from each other. So it's tempting to say that they're vertical angles and they're the same. But if you outline the rays or lines that create angles 1 and 2, watch this. This is not a straight line. Do you see how I had to take a turn? So 1 and 2 are not vertical angles because they're not created by two straight lines. There's that extra line going through. Of course, my Apple Pencil might die. I think we're gonna make it through. We can do it. All right, moving on. Let's go, I wanna go this way first. Yeah. Adjacent angles. You might have heard the word adjacent before. If someone lives adjacent to you, it's kind of like your neighbor, okay? So adjacent angles are two angles that are next to each other and they share a common side. So here's an easy example. Let's say I have this and this. We'll call this angle 1 and this angle 2. Angle 1 and angle 2 share this common side right here, so we could say 1 and 2 are adjacent. Okay, adjacent means neighbor angles. They're right next to each other. So now let's go to complementary. We're going to move this way, counterclockwise. Complementary angles are two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. So I'm going to give you two examples for this. Here's one thing. We know that 90-degree angles look like an L, and usually you'll see a box. So if you see a 90-degree angle that's split like this, and let's say we have angle 1 and angle 2, angle 1 and 2 would have to be complementary because they create a 90-degree angle. They have to add up to 90. But they don't have to always be set up like that. They could be separate. Like let's say we just have this angle here. Let's say this one's 30 degrees. And then we have this angle over here. And this angle is 60 degrees. They're not adjacent. They're not put together. They don't necessarily make a right angle right now because they're not put together, but they're still complementary because they add to 90 degrees. Now, if I move to those angles, and I did put them together, they should kind of make that L shape. They should make it 90 degrees. So there's two examples of complementary angles. Sometimes you'll just see the box and it's two angles that make up a right angle. Sometimes it's just two random angles that happen to add up to 90. Okay, supplementary angles has a similar concept. It's any two angles whose sum is 180. So if you think back to the last lesson, we kind of classified some angles. We had acute, obtuse, right, and then straight. So the straight angle was the one that looked like a line, and that one was equal to 180 degrees. So let's say I had one straight angle. This would be a straight angle. Looks like a line. It's 180 degrees. If I separated that into two angles, like this, and called this angle 1 and this angle 2, since they make up that straight line, 1 and 2, we could say are supplementary. They would have to add up to 180. They make a line. But just like the last example, they don't always have to make a straight angle together. They could be, let's give like a vertical angles example. Draw a picture where your intersecting lines look like they're intersecting at 90. Okay, and I want you to draw a box. Say this is angle 1 and this is angle 2. Well, 1 and 2 are vertical angles and they're both 90 degrees. 90 plus 90 equals 180. So even though they're not exactly in a line together, I could say angle 1 and 2 are supplementary because they're going to add to 180. They're also vertical angles, which is cool. And then last but not least, linear pair. So I did linear pair last because linear pair actually ties together two words that we just went over. Two angles that are adjacent and supplementary. They form a straight line. That's what linear pair means. Linear means line. Pair means two, so it's two angles that form a line. We already drew a picture of that. It's this right here. Okay. 1 and 2 form a straight line if you put them together. The angles do. So if you were to measure 1 and 2 together on a protractor, it's going to go all the way from 0 to 180. That is a straight line. It's a linear pair. They are also supplementary. We could also say they're adjacent because they're right next to each other, angle 1 and angle 2. So here's your task for right now that you are going to do on your own. Pause, and I want you to check all relationships between angles 1 and 2 for each of these examples. Some of them you might be only checking one box. Some of them you might be checking multiple boxes. Check anything that applies. Once you have that done, let's see if we were right. So 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are across from each other by intersecting lines, so they are vertical angles, meaning they're going to be the same measure. Now, I don't know anything about their measures, so I don't know if they're adding up to 90 or 180 or anything like that. We just know that they're across from each other, so just vertical. Now, 1 and 2. 1 and 2, notice they're right next to each other. They share this ray right here. So that makes them neighbor angles. They are adjacent. They're not vertical. Vertical is when they're across from each other at an intersection. However, they are actually going to be 90 degrees because this right here is a straight line, meaning this is going to be 180. put 180. And then you have the box, which means 90. Well, if that half is 90, that means this other half has to be 90 degrees as well. So 1 and 2 actually do have to make up a 90-degree angle, because this would be a box if you wanted to add it. It has to be. So 1 and 2 are actually complementary, meaning they add to 90. However, 1 and 2 are not supplementary. They would not add to 180. Not linear pair either, because I'm just talking about angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 and angle 2 on their own do not form a line. There's just a line involved in the picture. Number 3. By the way, if you need to pause again and kind of rethink some of yours, you can. This is good practice. Number 3, 1 and 2. Yes, they are adjacent, because if you look at 1 and 2, they share a side right here. They're right up next to each other. They're not vertical though, because they're not across from each other. They're not complementary because they're not going to add to 90. But I want you to look. If you look at angle 1 and angle 2, if you were to measure these on a protractor, see how that's kind of making a half circle? If you were to line your protractor up, you would start at 0. It's going to go all the way to 180. They create this line right here. 1 and 2 are making a line, which means linear pair. And a line is always 180 degrees, so they're going to be supplementary. Okay. Number 4, adjacent. They're just right next to each other. We don't know anything about their measures. We don't see the box, nothing. Okay. Number 5. I really like number 5. Number 5 is fun. So 1 and 2. Ask yourself, are they vertical? If you outlined angle 1 and 2, can you create angle 1 and 2 using 2 intersecting lines? Yes, you can. Okay, so these 2 lines are crossing. Those are the only 2 lines that are creating angles 1 and angle 2. So they are vertical, meaning they're the same measure. So this is kind of fun. If you forgot what these little marks mean right here, this means that they're congruent. So those 2 angles are congruent, but 1 and 2 are also congruent. That means all 3 of these angles are the same measure. Could angle 1 and angle 2 add up to 90? I want you to think about that for a second. Do angle 1 and angle 2 add up to 90? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to erase some of my marking. Okay, we said angle 1 and angle 2 have to be congruent. They're the same, whatever it is. If this is a box and this is 90 degrees, that means this has to be 90 degrees as well. And it says that these are congruent right here. So if those 2 angles right there are the same and they add to 90, that means they have to be 45 and 45, right? And we just said that 1 and 2 are the same because they're vertical, so this is 45. So are 1 and 2 complementary? Do they add to 90? Yes, they do, because they're both 45 degrees. That's my favorite example. I like this one. There's a lot to unpack there. And last but not least, we have number 6. Number 6, 1 and 2 are vertical because they're across from each other. So remember, that means 1 and 2 are the same measure. Anything else? Let's think. I see the box there. So does that mean 1 and 2 are complementary? If you checked complementary, you're probably not alone. Complementary means they add to 90 though. Does 1 plus 2 equal 90? No. Actually, 1 and 2 would have to be 90 degrees. Because if there's a 90 degree next to them and they make a line, 180 minus 90 is 90. So 90 plus 90, which is what angle 1 and angle 2 are, actually equal 180. So their sum is 180. And these 2 are actually supplementary. However, they're not a linear pair because they don't make a line together. There's just a line involved. So hopefully you guys are doing okay with this. We will keep practicing these words because, again, these are things we're going to use all year long, okay? All these vocab words. So make sure you go back and do part 2 as well.